When most fans think about the Fangio scheme, they envision soft coverage that aims to take away explosive plays. And while eliminating big plays is a major goal, Vic Fangio is an aggressive coordinator just in his own way. We'll take a look at a few of his staple concepts to illustrate this. The first one we'll start with is his whip fire zone pressure. For anyone unfamiliar, a fire zone pressure is a 5-man blitz that deploys 6 defenders in coverage, usually in the form of 3 deep and 3 under zone defenders. Whip means that the will linebacker is going to blitz through the weak B gap. However, in Fangio's scheme, they usually, not always, but usually try to send the blitz to the running back side in 2x2 formations, so sometimes the blitz ends up coming through the strong side B gap, but we'll get to that later. Let's look at what the blitz is trying to accomplish before looking at how Fangio adds his own twist to stay sound in coverage. In the NFL, with 4 down fronts, you're more likely to see the offensive line sliding the protection to the strong side with either a 3-man or a 4-man slide. In that case, if the offense is using a 5-man protection scheme where the running back is releasing into a route right away, that leaves the offense short a blocker on the weak side. In these scenarios, you'll most often see the tackle step down inside to take away the linebacker blitzing up the middle so that the quarterback has room to step into the throw. This generally leaves the defensive end free, and the quarterback has to get rid of the ball quickly. If the tackle doesn't step down, the blitzing linebacker is coming free up the middle. If the offense uses a 6-man protection scheme that keeps the running back in to block, then that forces the back to block a linebacker. That has 2 benefits for the defense. First, running backs generally aren't great blockers, so blitzing the linebacker is a great opportunity to get pressure. The second benefit is that by forcing the running back to stay into block, the defense has 1 less receiving threat to worry about. Think about teams with receiving weapons like Jahmyr Gibbs or Christian McCaffrey or Alvin Kamara. Instead of having to worry about how to cover those guys, make them block instead. What happens if the offensive line slides to the pressure side? For one, the defensive tackle to the blitz side is stunting inside trying to cross the face of the center in the first place. With the center now sliding to the defensive tackle that is trying to cross his face, this often makes it easier for the defensive lineman to win. Jalen Carter's elite movement skills should excel in this role. The defense can also change the pass of the blitzing linebacker and edge defender if they see the line sliding to the blitz. Notice on this play how the linebacker gave away the blitz too early and the offense sets the protection to the weak side. Now the edge defender will slant inside, with the linebacker looping around. The tackle is drawn inside for a moment and is late getting back to the linebacker looping around the outside. A hold wasn't called here, but it definitely should have been. If the offense continually shows that they're going to slide the protection to the weak side, then Fangio can use a changeup, like sending the nickel from the strong side. And overall, the offensive line can just get confused when the defense sends pressure. Like Mike McDonald has said, don't give the protection too much credit. Make them block you, because they'll screw things up themselves. I mentioned that Fangio puts his own twist to stay sound in coverage. I'm sure by now, you've recognized that in every play we've looked at, only 4 defenders are actually rushing the quarterback. The edge defender opposite of the blitzing linebacker is dropping into coverage, but that still hasn't stopped the defense from getting free rushers or forcing the running back to stay into block. When you see an off-ball linebacker that is not aligned on the line of scrimmage blitzing, and a defensive lineman dropping into coverage, that is usually classified as a creeper pressure. While Fangio uses creepers, in his world this play isn't classified as a creeper. They are still using fire zone rules and coverage, and this extra defender is referred to as a bonus dropper, which I've talked about before. Essentially, this allows the defense to drop an extra defender into coverage to help combat the problem areas of fire zone coverage, and it creates an extra layer for the defense to combat offenses trying to create high-low stretches on various defenders. Let's take a look at what I mean. In Fangio's version of fire zone coverage, you have 3 defenders playing deep thirds, although the corners are really using a technique that plays out very much like man coverage unless the number 1 receiver runs a shallow route right away. There are 2 seam flat defenders that take the number 2 receivers on anything out or vertical. In typical fire zone, the number 3 receiver releases fast to the flat, then the seam defenders would widen out with the number 3 receiver, but in Fangio's version, that doesn't happen. It basically ends up playing out like man coverage for the seam defenders unless number 2 goes underneath and inside right away. The remaining hook defenders rules vary from 2x2 and trips formations. Against trips, they use a 3-receiver hook technique and are often referred to as a 3-rec hook defender. They work to the side of the 3rd receiver. They will carry that receiver vertical, but they are not going to chase him to the flat. Let's take a look at some scenarios against trips. In a typical fire zone, if the offense were to run something like a flood concept, then the seam defender is going to be put in conflict. Remember, Typically, the seam defender would carry number 2 vertical, and when number 3 starts to out-leverage the seam defender, then he will widen to the flat route. That creates a high-low stretch on the defender. How about if the offense runs something like a shock concept, where the number 1 receiver runs a hitch, number 2 runs a slot fade, and the number 3 runs a stick route. Now with the seam defender carrying the slot fade vertical, that leaves a 3-rec hook defender out-leveraged on the stick route breaking outside. As a result, the 3-rec hook defender often ends up playing that 3rd receiver tighter, which compounds the issue by vacating the middle of the field. Or that defender is so worried about getting out-leveraged to the flat that they end up letting the number 3 cross their face too easily. By utilizing a bonus dropper, the defense can now alleviate many of these issues. Against trips formations, that bonus dropper is responsible for widening to the flat, allowing the 3-rec hook player to stay in the middle of the field and leverage anything over the middle. Here we see the bonus dropper take away the stick route, and with the running back releasing quickly, the quarterback has to get the ball out fast, and the opposite seam defender is flying down to take away the running back to the opposite flat. On this next play, the bonus dropper allows a hook defender to leverage the sit route inside, and as he widens back outside, he is now free to drop into the window for the basic route coming in behind him. Where this play really flexes its muscles is when the running back stays in to block. Now the defense has 7 defenders to cover 4 receiving threats. You can't really force that scenario to happen with traditional 4-man rush looks. On this play, the bonus dropper takes the tight end to the flat, while the hook defender can help to initially leverage the crossing route with a strong side seam defender before coming off to take the drag route. With the running back staying in to block, now the weak seam defender is freed up and can look back to the strong side for crossing routes coming back to his side of the field. This is a beautiful example of how this pressure allows the defense to take away crossing routes that are so dangerous and prevalent across the league. Unfortunately, the corner falls down on this play, but you get the point. Here's another example of this against the Panthers towards a bunch look. You get 6 defenders with eyes against the bunch, all because you can force 6 offensive players to block 4 rushers. Whip is also great against empty formations for many of the reasons that this play is good against trips. Again, we see the bonus dropper working to the flat, allowing the hook defender to provide inside support on the number 2 receiver running up the seam. Against 2x2 formations, they usually try to send the blitz to the side of the running back, again trying to force the back to stay in to block. Because of that, the blitz might come from the passing strengths or it might come from the weak side. Against 2x2 looks, that usually means the bonus dropper is dropping away from the side with 3 immediate receiving threats. So if the back releases to the flat right away, the hook defender is going to take that back to the flat. It now plays out very similar to cover 1 hole, with the bonus dropper acting like the hole defender. You still get the same benefits of having an unblocked defender as long as the offense sets the protection away from the back. The Eagles actually ran this play against the Dolphins, and it's how Nolan Smith got his first career sack. Although Jalen Carter freelances here when he should be crossing the center's face. Luckily, Nolan Smith coming unblocked didn't give Tua enough time to exploit the open rush lane. The exception to the hook defender chasing the back into the flat would be on a formation like we see here, where the tight alignment of the number 2 receiver is an indication that the receiving threat is going across the formation. You can see the backer and seam defender switching and matching the routes perfectly. If the back stays in to block, then the hook defender doesn't need to chase anyone to the flat, and it plays out very similar to a typical cover 3 match play, and now there are 2 hook defenders providing inside support. This blitz is also great against the run, but I've already spent enough time on this one specific play, so I'll jump to some other pressure looks that Fangio regularly employs. While the whip fire zone is definitely a staple for Fangio, he'll mix in some more traditional creepers to complement that look. Whip is typically a blitz sent to the weak side, especially against trips and empty formations, and teams will begin to counter by sliding their protection weak as well. To keep the offense honest, he'll send pressure from the strong side while dropping the edge to the weak side, while using different forms of split field coverages behind it, such as quarters, or cover 6 or 8 variations. The Dolphins are trying to do exactly that here and are hoping to influence a protection pre-snap with the well linebacker walked up to the line. Still, the Patriots slide the line to the blitz, but with the pressure coming, Mac Jones' internal clock starts to speed up. He wants to get the ball to his outlet on the other side, but the dropping edge defender is in position to collect the running back as he releases. The Dolphins do a great job passing the routes off, and the pressure gets home. Notice how the creeper pressure gets Christian Wilkins one-on-one with the center. If the line doesn't slide to the weak side, it's still a great way to get a plus matchup for an interior rusher. That's important against teams like the Cowboys, who have 2 all-pro guards. On another play, we see the same look against the Cowboys, and although they do slide the line to the pressure, the tackle either didn't hear the protection call or he had a mental error and stepped inside to take the linebacker. Don't give the protection too much credit. Make them sort and block it correctly. In coverage, we see Andrew Van Ginkel at edge running with a wheel route from the running back. That's why it's important to have versatile edge defenders in Fangio's scheme. The tight end is running free down the seam, but I imagine the weak safety is supposed to be using a poach or tricks technique and matching the number 3 receiver on any deep crossing routes coming back over. Out of his odd fronts, he really likes using A-gap creepers where he sends a linebacker up the middle while dropping his edge defenders into coverage. By utilizing his odd fronts, the offensive line is most likely going to utilize a man-blocking protection scheme where the 5 offensive linemen are blocking the 5 defensive linemen in front of them, with the running back picking up any extra off-ball defenders blitzing. Again, this often forces the back to stay in to block. Like with the other creepers we saw, Fangio typically runs his split field coverages behind it, whether that's quarters or some form of cover 6 or cover 8. Like we saw with the whip fire zone, with the running back staying in to block, you get the added benefit of having 7 defenders covering 4 receiving threats. If the offense doesn't keep it back in for protection, they can often get a free rusher and force the quarterback to move to his checkdown. Here we see the Dolphins shift into a bear front, get the man protection scheme they want, and a free rusher up the middle. The quarterback tries to avoid a sack by getting the throw out quickly to the running back in the flat, but the edge defender is dropping out to cover him. While he doesn't make the tackle, he slows down the running back enough for the rest of the defense to rally and stop him short of the first down. These creeper pressures are also great against boot action teams, especially when they're trying to have a tight end block and release into the flat. Here we see that play out as the edge defender smothers the tight end and doesn't allow him to release and give the quarterback an outlet. Here we see the Chiefs using a slide protection on a play action, and the blitzing backers force a 2-on-1 against the guard and allows a free rusher to the quarterback. Again, we see that a dropping edge defender is in position to take away the check down after the coverage on the back end is able to hold up. The Dolphins probably wouldn't have gotten a free runner at the quarterback if they sent 4 traditional rushers. On top of that, the Dolphins were tied with the Ravens for 5th in cover 0 looks. And within those cover 0 looks, they use different variations, such as standard cover 0 or the reactionary rain blitz that the Patriots popularized. Fangio's defenses also utilize other 5-man pressures, including traditional fire zones. However, if they sent 5-man pressures, they were much more likely to play man coverage behind it. Eagles fans have heard that we have been running a Fangio scheme for the past 2 seasons, and while they have implemented a lot of the principles you see in a Fangio defense, they have not been nearly as aggressive as Fangio has been. Like I mentioned, the Dolphins were tied for 5th in percentage of cover 0 blitzes last season. The Eagles were 20th in 2023 and 16th in 2022. Using PFF's numbers, while the Dolphins were slightly below average in blitz rate, they led the NFL in sim pressures. For clarification, PFF includes creepers as simulated pressures in their accounting. The Eagles were 22nd in blitz rate and 23rd in sim pressure rate in 2023. They were 22nd in blitz rate and 27th in sim pressure rate in 2022. It's safe to say that this Eagles defense will look a little different despite still running a Fangio scheme. I didn't even look at the Dolphins' stunt rate, where they ranked 9th. All of the blitz, sim, and creeper pressures and stunts Fangio used led to the Dolphins leading the NFL in unblocked pressures in 2023 by a good margin. The pressures we looked at are not groundbreaking, nor are they something that Fangio just started running, and they're actually quite common across the NFL. But you can look back at his defenses over the years and see these concepts being utilized at multiple different stops in his long career. His defenses have regularly been among the leaders in sim pressure rates, including leading the league in his final year with the Bears in 2018. The fans of Philadelphia have longed for an aggressive defensive coordinator since the days of Jim Johnson. They're getting another one next season, just with the Fangio twist.